Hello and welcome to the first episode of Betrayed by Dice, the tabletop wargaming podcast where every number explodes.
Ah, for
My name's Lee Burns and I'm joined here by my co-host Daryl T. Stoker. Daryl, how's things?
Good, thank you very much. Yep, very good. It's a seasonally warm Sunday evening. Had a nice day in the allotment because I'm super cool. And yeah, it's been a fairly chilled weekend. So yeah, how about you?
Yeah, good. So yeah, we're in the middle of a bank holiday weekend here in the northeast of England and everywhere else in the country. Yeah, I'm good. I've been to the fair this morning
Excellent.
with my 6-year-old daughter. And I've realised that I'm at a sort of inflection point with the rides whereby the ones that she wants to go on now are my limit. So yeah, that's yeah. I'm not into roller coasters and stuff. So yeah,
No,
it's been an up and down day.
good.
Slightly frazzled, but yeah. So looking forward to doing this. Yeah. So shall we introduce ourselves a bit?
Sure
Yeah,
thing.
this is the first episode of the podcast. So
Who
yeah.
are we?
Who are we? Yeah. So Daryl, how did you get into gaming? What games are you into, and what armies do you play, and stuff like that?
I've been knocking on the 30 years of gaming now since believe it was second edition 40k that I got. The good old, there's a renaissance at the moment of the old school Marines, and the cardboard standy orc dreadnoughts and things like that. Played various armies throughout. I'm a bit of a magpie when it comes to models. So various armies throughout. But I spent a lot of time collecting Blood Angels. But the main game that I play is a game called Conquest. It's a very good game, rank and flank style game made by Parabellum Wargames, and I'm lucky enough to be a vanguard for Parabellum, so get to teach people as sort of like in an official capacity and help generate local communities and things like that. So that, and then just a smorgasbord of skirmish games and sort of less popular games that are interesting and quirky and unique. And yeah, how about you?
Yeah. Yeah. We're sat at Betrayed by Dice HQ, aka Daryl's house, absolutely surrounded by, as you say, a smorgasbord of minis from all sorts of games.
Yeah.
So yeah. Well, for myself, yes, I was aware of gaming and particularly Warhammer when I was a kid, and yeah, got a few copies of White Dwarf at different times. I think it was like 146 or something that had like Man of War on the front cover.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, my parents weren't coughing up for like little plastic soldiers, so it had to wait until I was like a grown up basically. And like a sort of chance conversation with a friend, a colleague at work, he was into some 40k. I'd been painting some bits of fantasy stuff and Blood Bowl. I bought the Blood
Yeah,
Bowl
man.
box. And this was more or less at exactly the time when the old world was blown up. So I just sort of
Yeah.
I painted up some night goblins, and I was thinking, all right, let's do this. And then yeah, no,
Not
I
anymore.
wasn't doing it. But yeah, I had a chat with a guy at work, Ben, who invited us for a game of 40k, and sort of got into it that way.
Yep.
I think a lot of people do, and played mostly GW stuff. So yeah, 40k, and so I really got into Kill Team in the last edition,
Mm-hmm.
and got really into Kill Team in this edition
Yeah.
because it's a really good game. And then yeah, started sort of looking for other things to play as well. So like Frostgrave, Stargrave,
Fantastic.
and as you've said, Conquest, which yeah, as you've rightly mentioned, is a great game. So yeah, it's probably just at that point of like sort of looking outwards from the world of GW into
Yeah.
like other
Yeah.
games and see what's going on out there.
I think that's a common theme, isn't it? We've got this um a very large company in GW with a really long heritage and a very efficient PR machine. Um where I think most people when they first land at the port of mini wargaming, it's usually with a GW game.
Yeah.
Um, but and you've probably seen us use the analogy on the Discord. I feel like GW is a bit like thinking that the best burger in the world is a McDonald's because all you've had is a McDonald's. And yeah, it's fine. It's absolutely fine, but there's just so much variety out there. And sometimes those little artisanal ones that you get at a random food festival that just blow your mind are the things you need to be looking for in wargaming as well, which we'll get onto later. But yeah, I mean, GW is rightly one of the biggest, if not the biggest, miniature rules writer slash games companies in the world, and they do put out a lot of okay content and some good stuff.
Yeah, yeah, some great, yeah,
Yeah.
some great stuff. Yeah, yeah. This is something to talk about in more depth at another time, isn't it? But yeah,
Definitely.
absolutely. Like do people get into it through GW? Do they stay with those games, or do they move
Mhm.
on to other stuff, or do they do both? Like that, the whole sort of like the way it all works.
For sure.
That ecosystem is really interesting. But yeah, so I'm super excited to be doing this podcast because we've been talking about it for a little while.
We have.
Um, should we talk about then what this podcast is going to be? What are the people who are listening going to hear us talking about on Betrayed by Dice?
So my personal desire, wish, is for just a variety hour. Like it's going to be a sit down, like mates do, over a beer or rolling some dice or with a meal, and just chat about the thing that inevitably we're all into. We all love gaming, be it mini war gaming, board gaming, RPGs, video games, whatever. We all love it, and we all like to talk about it. And genuinely, quite often when we're having conversation, we do have that sort of, oh, you know, somebody might actually want to listen to this, or like have an opinion on it as well.
Yeah,
So I think definitely, yeah, just variety, talk about all those different cool games that we'll find, fun experiences that we've had at the gaming table, stuff that we're looking forward to, all
yeah,
that kind of stuff.
yeah. Same, same. Yeah, for me, I'd definitely like it to be a place where we can have those conversations about sort of
Mhm.
all aspects of tabletop wargaming as well. So different games, different
Mhm.
manufacturers, painting, modeling,
Yeah.
the lore, the lot. Not so much into the cosplay side of it, but that's fine. I don't think that works quite so well over audio as well. So
No,
like,
no, no. Yeah, no.
maybe leave that to the people who are really into that. But yeah,
Yeah.
other than that, yeah, all of it. And yeah, I'm also really just interested in the types of games that people play and what that says about them,
Mhm.
why people are playing what they play, and some of the sort of social issues that can come up through gaming. So
Yeah.
sometimes when we talk about gaming, it sort of feels like we're actually talking about other things, or at least it's a way to talk about other
Mhm.
things.
Mhm.
So representation, gender, all of this stuff. What are we actually doing when we're shuffling these little plastic models around?
Yeah.
But also, I don't think we should be above whinging about Space Marines being OP or badly designed paint pots or whatever. So, yep, absolutely a broad range of things
All
to
of the
talk about.
above. Yeah.
Perfect. So I think we're going to have a bit of a structure for the podcast.
We'll try.
We'll see how this develops over time, basically, I think. But
Yeah.
yeah, so we'll talk a bit about hobby progress and plans.
Mhm.
I like the idea of having plans in there because although accountability is brilliant, it's also nice just to be able to
Yeah.
talk about things without necessarily having done them. A bit about some recent games that we've had.
Yep.
So we're both members of West Allotment Wildlings,
We are indeed.
which is a fantastic wargaming club. So yeah, check them out, particularly on Facebook's probably the easiest place to find them.
Yep. You get to see pictures of the gaming nights and all the cool armies on the tables and things like that. And
Yeah,
if you're local to us, obviously feel free to come down.
yeah. So that's in well West Allotment, near the coast in the northeast of England.
Mhm.
So yeah, a lot of the games that we probably might discuss would be there, or
Absolutely.
other places as well.
If I've got my way, they'll all be there.
Okay, and then yeah, we're going to have a main topic each time, so something that we can go into in a bit of depth. And this episode is almost 2 months exactly after the launch of Warhammer 40k 10th edition. That's a game you might or might not have heard of,
Mhm.
Daryl. Been around for a while, I think.
Yeah.
So yeah, so a little look at that from all sorts of different points, I think. So in terms of like, yeah, the miniatures, the box set that came out,
Yep.
But also, things to do with the rules, what's changed in 10th edition,
Mhm.
some impressions from first games, a little bit of a chat about balance. It might be in a bit of a mess. We'll get to that.
Don't worry, I'll edit most of what I say out.
All right. And then I think a bit of thoughts and predictions as well about how the edition is going to work, because it's in a particular moment now with everyone's got indexes, but there's going to be some publications coming. There's going to be some
There
codexes.
is.
So yeah, how that's all going to pan out. And yeah, that should just about do it.
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay, great. So let's go firing straight into hobby progress and plans. So do you want to shoot first, Daryl? What have you been up to and how's it been going?
Sure. I have been cracking on with a new Dweghome army for Conquest. Dweghome being the dwarf adjacent race in Conquest. Very cool, steampunky, fire magic based mad lads that are always down for a scrap and love killing big monsters.
Brilliant.
Um, I didn't originally play Dweghome, but after a jibe from Alex, one of our players who suggested that I'm a bit of a meta hound and that I was going to go full sweat for the tournament that we're going down to in the end of September at the LGT. I thought, well, sorry, why don't I? Because, if that's what they think, it's self-fulfilling prophecy, you know what I mean?
So are the Dweg home, are they pretty hot?
Yeah, so I think they sit at the top of the meta at the minute with about a 61% win rate. Um, not to dig too deep into it, but one of the really good things about Conquest is that although there is definitely a divide, I think the lowest win rate's something around 54%. And the current lowest win rate faction, 100 Kingdoms, just took the Adepticon tournament.
Okay.
They won the tournament. And quite often, different tournaments have different armies winning every time. It's never a case of it's this army that's going to win or these two armies or whatever.
Interesting.
So yeah, so the three of us, me, Alex, and Rob, are going to be going down to the LGT, and I thought, why not get a new army for it? They can be a bit tasty, they're strong, but there's play into them from every faction, so they're just you've just got to be careful. But yep, so building a 2,000 point army for that. I've been cracking on with the Star Wars Shatterpoint core set. It's a lovely core set. Very fun game to play. Myself and
Nice.
Scott have been playing quite a bit of it and getting really into it. There's a couple of other folks in the club have picked it up. Really interesting system, really easy to learn, dead fluid, and just works really well. And a really interesting scoring system. I've knocked out a commission of some Eldar stuff for a gent that I was put onto from one of the commission painters in the club. And I've been painting a Moonstone corset for Alex, the aforementioned Alex.
Yep.
He's moving away soon, so it was a little bit of a gift for him as he moves away.
So is he playing Moonstone already, or was this you
No,
getting him
no,
into it?
so
Or
no, so he had bought the corset
all right.
at some point, and it was just on a shelf. And I really wanted to paint the models. And he doesn't really like painting that much, although he's very good at it. Yeah, so I just sort of offered to take up the mantle.
Definitely. So you're talking about Conquest and going to the LGT for
Mhm.
that. So yeah, we're both, well, you with being a local sort of rep for
Mhm.
Parabellum. Yeah, I need to thank you for like getting me into Conquest a bit. I think we're both obviously pretty big fans, and we'll probably be, I think, talking about it a fair bit
Yes, yeah.
in the podcast in the future. Yeah, so if anybody that doesn't know Conquest, it is a sort of rank and flank.
Mass battle.
Yep.
It's 38mm scale miniature game from Parabellum War Games. Um, Typical fantasy setting with some pretty cool twists. So it's got your humans, your dwarves. The elves are very strange. It's the faction that you play. The
Yeah.
spires. They're an insectile race from a different planet, which has ended up stuck on the planet of air, the world of air, which it's set in.
Yeah, they're
And
like sort of body horror refugees.
yeah,
They're amazing.
exactly.
They're like, yeah, it sort of feels with them that like people have taken a lot of the weirdest things out of lots of sort of different references and just stacked them
Yeah,
up. Yeah,
totally,
very cool.
totally. But you've got your undead, you've got some sort of steampunky Greek, like Athenian Greeks. You've got orcs riding dinosaurs, which is just one of the most amazing spectacles. And in fact, my main hook for the game, I quite often play a game of Conquest and I'll bring the Apex Predator, which is a giant T-Rex,
Yeah.
and just put it on the table next to me, even if I'm not playing that faction. And the amount of people that come over to the table just to find out what that model is unbelievable.
So that's effectively the mascot for the game then, just this
Yeah.
honking big T-Rex.
Well, actually, the mascot for the game is a very angry chicken, but I suppose that is a T-Rex as well, isn't it? So
Basically, yeah.
yeah.
Very cool. Very cool. So yeah, typically diverse bunch of stuff from yourself that you've been painting up there. How did the commission stuff go? So the Eldar, how did you get into that and how's it gone?
So I got into it through one of the gents at the club, a gent called Elliot, who's a commission painter, very good commission painter. His Instagram's called Risky Paint. So check him out. But he just put me onto a guy who is an eBay seller who buys armies, secondhand, refurbs them, primes them, and then gets painters to paint them, and so he sells them on. And it was 10 Dark Reapers, 10 Banshees, 10 Rangers, and a Farseer Skyrunner. And I did 6 tanks for him as well, 6 bolt action tanks, Shermans, and I've previously did a German commission for him as well, some 5 tanks for the Germans. And to be honest with you, it's been a bit of a slog. The Eldar are very fine models with lots of detail.
Yep.
And I'm trying to strike the balance between, time efficient and looking good. And it's a difficult balance to find on models that have such fine detail. I think Marines and things you can really get away with sort of time efficient painting methods, but it's difficult with Eldar without making them look like they've been painted quickly.
Yeah. So that was something I was gonna. Yeah, that's kind of answered it. But yeah, for anyone that might not have done commission painting before,
Mhm.
like how have you found the sort of so these models aren't going to be yours eventually?
yeah.
How have you found like having this discipline of like making it nice and nice enough that but not so I don't know so detailed that you spend forever on
So
it?
I'm not so great at that. And actually, as the 3 units have been done, each unit's got a bit faster because I've had to be stricter with myself.
Okay.
But I definitely spent a lot longer on the models than I probably, you know, I've if I had just went to work and done another shift, I probably would have got paid as much
Yeah. Sure.
for a lot less work. But at the same time, I'm getting practice doing a hobby that I love, painting models that I don't own and probably aren't going to be buying. And it's just nice to have a little bit of feedback and things as well from my friends and from the gentleman who I sell for. Paint for. And like he contacted us the other day and just said that one of my German tanks is sold, painted a Tiger 2, and that sold the other day. So it's nice to see people like the stuff that I've painted. So
That's cool.
Yeah, it's cool.
So
That was
yeah,
good.
so this guy is what buying models, getting people to paint them, and then he's like got a
He sells them
shop
on.
them.
Yeah,
All right,
he
that's
sells
cool.
them on
Yeah, nice to know that your stuff's just gonna go out there into the world.
in BUs. Yeah, so I think my Tiger 2 actually went to Australia.
Wow,
Yeah,
really going out there into the
yeah,
world.
yeah,
All right,
yeah.
that's super cool. All right,
What about you?
what have I been up to?
Hobby progress
All right,
and plans.
and plans. Yeah, so in terms of sort of like finished models, the last thing I've sort of done start to finish, and this was to do with 10th edition coming out and looking at some models that I already had, which maybe had like we're gonna get a new lease of life was so the Judicia, who was in the Indomitus box.
It was.
So yeah, I've had that model for like 3 years or whatever it was. And its time is now. And yeah, that I've painted that in what is sort of becoming the way that I'm tending to paint a lot of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
When I'm looking for like a nice but can get finished reasonably quickly sort of way. So that's prime and zenithal prime, so like a black prime and then white from above. And then looking for like the main couple of elements to be done with contrast paints.
Yeah.
And then sort of like going back and like some bits and bobs of highlighting and like smaller details going in with regular acrylic paint. So yeah, so that was really enjoyable to do that model. Sort of like practicing. I'm always trying to try to figure out like a way of doing like leather in a way which
Mhm,
I
mhm.
like doing. So like the way with this was it was one of the darker browns, one of the darker GW contrast
The
paints.
Wildwood or Saigo
It
brown.
was Wildwood.
Yeah.
It was Wildwood. And then going in with like various lighter browns and doing like little scuffs and scratches all over the place, like
Yeah.
with the sort of, the sort of the finest point you could get on your
Mhm.
brush. And yeah, doing it that way. And yeah, came out good. I was
Yeah.
happy with that.
I really like that technique. Actually, I borrowed it for the Eldor Rangers that I painted and did a bit of sort of that like scratchy, crosshatchy sort of like where leather normally gets that like fairly stark
Yeah.
difference in tone, doesn't it, when it gets worn in like say like the crack bits on the elbows or bits that bend frequently. Yeah, and I just thought it looked great, and you had sort
Yeah.
of done a little guide on the Discord, so I thought, oh, well, I'll have that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
cheers, man. Yeah, I hate cloak. I really struggle with like, nicely blended cloaks. So I think I'm always looking for a way of like sort of like requires, I don't know, less skill or whatever, or just like a different process which
Yeah.
allows you to like just, do a thing and repeat it rather than having to sort of like, get the paint just the right
Mhm,
consistency and
mhm.
and just get those blends working. So yeah, little crosses, cross hatching and things like that working pretty good.
Looks great, yeah.
Other stuff. I had a game of Frostgrave, which was a great motivation to knock out the Sigmarite Mausoleum,
Yeah,
formerly known as the Garden of
the
Moor.
Garden of Moor. It should forever be known as the Garden of Moor.
Okay, so sorry, I painted the Garden of Moor.
Thank you.
And yeah, that the main thing to say about that was it was the first time that I'd sort of used oil washes in any great extent.
How did you
Um,
feel about the whole situation?
it went absolutely brilliant.
So
Um,
good.
just a mix of a brown and a black, and then thinned down quite a lot with mineral spirits, and then I was just slavering over the whole thing. So having like painted the brickwork basically grey, a few
Mhm.
different bricks here of different colours, an oil wash over the whole of it, and then dry brushed afterwards with a
Yeah.
lighter grey, and that looks great, and that absolutely did the job. And the thing with oil wash for anyone that hasn't used it, yeah, give it a go. There's a zillion YouTube videos to watch, but it was it didn't coffee stain. It didn't sort of like cool up.
Mhm.
If there was any bits where you'd slapped a bit too much on, you can sort of like leave it and just like wipe it off with
Yeah.
like a bit of cloth that's dipped in spirits or whatever.
Mhm.
And yeah, absolutely brilliant. Which has got me thinking about other ways that I want to use oil washers, basically.
Yeah, man. Yeah. I use them in almost everything that I can't think of anything that I've painted recently I haven't used them on. Except for I painted one D&D miniature which had a very cartoony aesthetic for a friend at work, and
Mm.
I didn't use them on that. But
You want to keep it quite bright with stuff like
very,
that, yeah.
yeah, very like almost like comic booky, um, like the Critical Role cartoon that they did, whatever it's
Okay.
called. So really bright, and the oils can lead to a bit more of a, especially if you're using the darker tones, bit more of that sort of grim dark aesthetic, or the the sort of um quite realistic looking like, and the dry really matte as well, so it gives it a bit of grunge, which is cool.
Yeah.
But no, I'm a huge proponent of oils. I just think they're just absolutely phenomenal, and you can use them in so many ways. You can use them in those really dilute, sort of low surface tension washes where they're just flowing into every crack of every brick, and they're looking absolutely amazing. Or you can really sort of just let them down a tiny little bit with some mineral spirit and but still have it quite pasty,
Okay.
and sort of slosh it on, and then you use that reductive painting technique that you're talking about where you go back afterwards with some makeup sponge or a brush or cloth dipped in mineral spirits, and have like really sort of authentic and convincing weathering effects,
Yeah.
which is essentially what the whole streak and grime revolution is all about. There's these thick, pasty versions of an oil or an enamel that leaves that stains and leaves like a really convincing looking afterwards. Where instead of like with traditional acrylic washes, you get that tea stain and a coffee stain that you're talking about.
Absolutely. I'm
Um,
glad you mentioned Streak and Grime because
mhm,
that was my first sort of non-acrylic epiphany.
mhm,
I think a lot along with a lot of people with Streak and Grime. And what did I first use it on? Some Necrons, I think.
mm,
Spray them silver, slop Streak and Grime all over the place. dry brush silver
Ooh,
afterwards,
yeah.
looking not bad. Um, and yeah, but like yeah, the oils obviously there's a whole world of like things going on with like actually not just using them to darken things down, but like using like a white oil
Yeah, I've
wash.
just picked up my first white oil actually. Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So like to do like plasma glows especially.
That's exactly what it's for. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm gonna in fact use it on this Skyrunner, the Corsair Skyrunner, for to go around the outsides of the runes to make the runes look like they're glowing from behind.
Ah, cool. I look forward to seeing that. Yeah, what else have I been doing? Um I did buy a Leviathan box when 10th edition came out,
Mhm.
like a lot of us.
Yep.
And I've been slow to start on that, but I have made a start, and it's a stern guard out of that I'm going to be painting first. I've nearly finished. There's only 5 of the dudes. No, there's 10 of them. I'm talking nonsense, but yeah, I've nearly finished those. Um,
I should be putting pictures of all these things up on the screen as we're talking, by the way. So if I'm not, please feel free to take us to task for that.
all right. Just arguing with myself. Is there 5 or 10 of them in the box?
I think there's 5 Stone Gods.
I
There's
bought.
10 of the Infernus Marines. Yeah.
There we go. There we go.
You
Yeah.
would believe that I liked 40k, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
5 Terminators.
We're gonna get into this.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and the one thing I mentioned about those, it's the first time I have used a Color Forge spray, which is matched to a GW spray.
Yeah.
So I've used like the matte black, which is
It
amazing.
is very good.
And
you're an Ultramarines collector, right?
exactly right. So yeah. So hence I bought a can of Color Forge Republic Blue.
Mhm.
Which is quite similar. Well, actually, completely color matched to Macragge Blue.
Mhm.
And yeah, amazing job by Colorforge. I mean, if all the rest of them are matched as well as that, I did that sort of probably, yeah, unnecessary thing of like putting a very thin layer of like Macragge Blue by brush afterwards.
Yeah.
Honestly, I don't think I could tell the difference. So I don't think
No.
I'll be doing that with the rest of the box.
No.
Yeah, and yeah, Colorforge sprays, they go on great, wonderful to paint on.
Yeah.
But yeah, nearly finished the unit of Stern Guard. Looking forward to getting them done. They're kind of cool as far as Marines go.
Yeah, they're really cool. They're one of in Firstborn times they were really cool thematically of like a cool thematic way of just getting some special weapons onto
Yeah.
the board, wasn't it? And I know that's not quite the same anymore, is it? Because it's just combi weapons, but you know they bring the devastating wounds, which is a good rule, and I like they've still got the tabards, which is really cool, and
Yeah.
they feel like they're good at shooting. They don't get loads of shots, but they feel like they're good at shooting. They've got the anti-infantry keyword and blah blah blah. So
Yeah, so you can
Yeah.
take them with either combi weapons,
Yeah.
or you can take them with Stern Guard bolters,
Yeah.
or a different kind of bolter, slightly different
Mhm.
bolter. But yeah, the models that you get in the box are like a mix of two. So like WYSIWYGs out the windows, sort of
Yeah.
like by design, really. But yeah, very cool models. Looking forward to finishing those off. In terms of future plans, I recently grabbed from Alex, friend of the podcast, a Aeronautica Imperialis box.
Mm.
So I'm really looking forward to painting up it's Marines and Tau that are in that.
Some Marines and Eldar.
Marines and Eldar.
Yeah.
Thanks. Marines and Eldar. And yeah, looking forward to painting something at a different scale.
Yeah. Yeah.
And just sort of like thinking about, you know, what sort of techniques I want to use on
Mhm,
something
mhm.
which is obviously, you know, got to be convincingly completely different scale. And I guess I do also have one eye on the upcoming, not going to remember the name of it. Let's just call it Epic.
Legia Imperialis or something like that.
Something like that.
Yeah.
The new version of Epic, which GW is bringing out, set in the Horus Heresy. They've said, and you know, you can bring, as well as like ground troops, you can bring Titans, and you can bring flyers as well. So in my head, there's a game with like, I don't know, there's 3 people on each side of a table. Somebody's got the Titans, somebody's got the Air Force. I don't think this is going to quite work out.
No, I think they're probably going to the Air Force and Titan side of things are going to be pretty limited.
Bit minimal. So like
Yeah.
the guy, if that was to happen, the guy with the flyers is not going to be, you know, rolling too many dice.
No.
However, I do like the idea of
Combined arms is one of the things that I always find amazingly interesting in games, and every game that I play, I try and find. I'm a bit of a aerophile, and I really like anything to do with fighter jet. I mean, you can see over there. But one of my favorite things to do is flight sims. I absolutely adore flight sims.
For anyone
Um,
just listening, there's a honking big joystick across the room,
yeah.
but yeah.
um, yeah, I love any way of shoehorning some sort of flyer into a game. Even in we were playing Cruel Seas not long ago. No, it was Cruel Seas Victory actually. Cruel Seas. And managed to get shoehorn a couple of fighters, so two Stukas and two uh, I can't remember what the other ones were.
Is this set in the Pacific? When's this set?
No, it was the Russian ones, but IL2s. Yeah, that was what
Okay.
IL2 Sturmovix. But it's cool. Just and it did very little, but it was just cool, like a cinematic plane flying past a ship and letting off a big rocket barrage. So I was well into that. But yeah, definitely would be lovely to see a really combined arms game on the table, because Epic traditionally was you could do all of those things,
Yeah.
and it did feel very combined arms. But as you say, there's a good chance that it ends up just lots and lots of heresy models, and you can bring a Reaver if you want, and you can bring Fire Raptors or whatever the flyers for the um, Marines. Or there's a Thunder Hawk as well, isn't
There's a
there?
little
Yeah,
there's a
there's
little
Thunder Hawk and
Thunderhawk, yeah.
Fire Raptors. So it'll be cool.
Yeah,
It'll
we'll
be
see.
cool.
We'll see how it goes. Yeah,
Lots of Spartans. I've been seeing lots of people 3D printing Spartans and getting ready for it like that. So that would be, yeah, I like those.
I like the idea of seeing some epic scale, uh, well, 30K
Yeah,
stuff on the tables
definitely.
because it looks cool, different terrain to
Hmm.
bring. Yeah, so and a whole sort of like different thing. So yeah, we'll see how that game goes. It should be out in the next couple of months, I think.
Yep.
Other than that, what else have I got planned? I want to finish up my spires for Conquest.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, I've again from Alex. I have bought some painted miniatures, which is not something I've really ever done before. But
Yeah.
like, there's there's a unit for the spires called Force Grown Drones, and the absolute meat shield of the army. And yeah, I didn't have it in me to paint a whole bunch more of those. So to acquire some already painted ones, fantastic. But yeah, some unpainted stuff for the spires. I've got the Centaur Avatara.
That's right. Yeah.
So those are amazing models. Basically, I don't know how to describe them. Sort of like big
Well, so they're
mounted.
Centaur. Yeah. So they're Centaurs. Avatara. Anything with the Avatara word in players is, excuse me, anything with the Avatara keyword inspires directly relates to a non-sentient construct that is built, that is controlled psychically from afar by the nobility of the spires. That they're essentially Gundams that are, obviously not as big as a Gundam, but controlled from a distance, so that these noble lords and whoever don't actually have to attend the battle, but they can still have a physical presence there. And the Avatara that you picked up
Yep,
are big, sort of almost like marionette style, long, very sort of slender
yep,
looking, almost like Japanese dolls.
yep,
Um, and the Centaur Avatara, on the other hand, are very large, bulky, half men, half horse, lots of armor, forearms. They've got a shield, a lance, swords, all sorts of different things. And they are what they sound like. They're big shock cavalry that can get in and trample people and bump them on the head afterwards as well.
yeah. They're sensational minis, and yeah, and they do something on the table that's probably a bit different than anything else that I've got. So yeah, really
Yeah.
looking forward to getting them painted up.
Hmm.
Other than that, I have just ordered or pre-ordered the Kill Team Gallowfall narrative terrain.
Yeah.
So lots of little drop pods as the this season of Kill Team ends, and the Space Hulk that we've all been fighting over like
Hmm.
falls down on whatever planet it's landing on or crashing into. Yeah, there's I think some of the narrative missions are about like getting into the drop pods and running off the thing
And getting
basically.
off before it crashes. Yeah.
Absolutely. So yes,
Yeah.
I'm really looking forward to getting that painted and having some really cool games.
Yeah, Gallo Dog was awesome. Like a really well. Actually, I'll wait a little while. We can talk about that afterwards. But Gallo Dog was a really refreshing
it's been a fun time.
experience. Yeah.
It's been a fun time
Mm.
in Kill Team, yeah. And then yeah, I've got I want to get started on the Leviathan Tyranids.
Mm-hmm.
I think I'm gonna do the sort of coconut crab thing,
Yep.
but maybe with this sort of like a dark Eldar kind of color palette.
Oh,
So
some purples and pinks.
Sybarite green is
Oh,
it?
right.
The
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So you've got. So this is actually the best. You can probably tell the wall. So if you can see, yeah, I actually picked this paint because this is very close to Ink by Darkness. It's somewhere between Ink by Darkness and Cavalite Green. And Ink by Darkness is the best paint that was ever made, by the way.
yeah. So
Absolutely.
I don't know the sort of
It's
triad is.
Ink by Cavalite Cyberite.
There we
Yeah.
go. Sybarites. They're like the yeah. I'm a bit disappointed you haven't like dry brushed the
Yeah.
corners of your windows in
Yeah.
Sybarite green. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to doing those. Sort of seeing how that turns out.
Yeah.
I did like a conquest model again. The abomination. It's sort of the big monster of the spires in the coconut crab sort of thing.
Looks great. You got little compliments about it Friday night, didn't you?
Yeah, yeah. It's a kind of weird model and not necessarily the most glorious in the range, but like yeah, it's got something to it, and
Mhm.
yeah, that kind of worked well, doing lots and lots of little dots basically.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're gonna try that on some Tyranids and see how that goes, and that's about it.
Good.
All right, shall we roll into talking about some recent games?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
What you been playing recently?
well, super recently, a couple of days ago, was playing Conquest
Mm.
at the West Allotment Wildlings Club. So it was my Spires against Alex's
Wood Rune.
as Woodrune. So yeah, the orcs basically, the
Is that right?
Woodrune.
Dinosaurs?
Yeah,
Mhm.
so there was like some sort of Triceratops rolling onto the pitch. Um,
Velociraptors. He
also
had one T Rex?
no T
Oh,
Rex,
no T Rex this
no
time.
T
Okay.
Rex in Alex's list, but yeah, just an absolutely fantastic game. So yeah, we're gonna have to do a big sort of a bit of a special on
Yeah.
Conquest because if you've listened so far, you can tell we both like this game. Um, but yeah, it was so a couple of the things to mention about it are it's alternating activations,
Yep. Big win
so
for me.
that works great. It keeps it sort of moving, keeps both people involved. And the other thing that's sort of like the magic source of the game, I think, is the fact that so the start of every turn, for every unit that you've got on the table, you have a card and you put them in order in a deck in which they will activate, and that's it. You
Yeah.
you are stuck to that order unless you've got some sort of
So
shenanigans
there's
which
some
breaks it.
Spire
Yeah,
shenanigans, isn't there?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. But yeah, so what that means is a unit is going to activate and it can only do one or two things, so you don't have this whole sort of like movement phase where you're trying to keep things in bubbles of other things. You just have to think each time about what that one unit wants to do, and it just
And maybe what's going to happen afterwards. So, like, how can I maximize the rest of this turn? Yeah, it's a really, I think it's a really, at first, maybe not jarring, but a little bit sort of out of the box mechanic for some people, where they're used to these 40k style bolt actions, well, not bolt action, sorry, like 40k style games or Age of Sigmar style games where it's like I move everything, I shoot everything, and then I hit stuff and you can hit us back. It's right, who wins priority for the turn, and it's different every turn, isn't it?
yeah,
Somebody else can go first each turn. um and it's right, in and that it's actually quite often, and I'm sure you noticed towards the end of the game, in the back half of the game, quite often choosing your first activation is really difficult because you have something that you would love to go first, but you can't guarantee that that unit's going to go first.
yeah,
And it becomes this sort of mind game of, am I going to win the roll? Is this going to be the best thing to act? If I do choose this and it goes and it's already been, it's been charged, it's lost half of its wounds or whatever, it's going to be much less effective and it's going to be a bit of a wasted turn and blah, blah, blah. And you have this sort of internal narrative with yourself. And it can become quite sort of tense and exciting, which is one of the things that I really love about it, because you genuinely, a lot of the times where you look over at your opponent and you just, both of you catch each other eye and you can think, you're in exactly the same position as me. Yeah, it's this. Whoever wins this priority role can really, it can make a massive difference to how your turn's going to go. but it also promotes flexibility.
Yeah.
So, yeah, fair enough. I haven't, got the turn that I wanted, the first turn that I wanted, but I've built my deck in such a way that I can mitigate it a little bit, and that comes with experience like that. But how did the game go last night?
It went great. It went great. There was so you don't necessarily the other thing probably to mention is you don't start with your entire army on the board.
No, yeah, it's rolling reserves.
You get some stuff, and then you roll dice to see if other stuff comes on. And as you go through the first few turns, you're getting more and more units and sort of like more heavy units,
hmm
basically.
hmm
So I was rolling very well to start with. So
hmm
I got a lot of my stuff onto the table, was able to sort of like control the objectives.
hmm
And then the thing that the spires do really well, or at least the sort of like the units that I've got, is just like loads and loads of healing.
Yeah.
So I had a massive block of the aforementioned force-grown drones. So he
hmm
would take 10 of them out, but then it would be my turn, and another and 6 of them would come back,
Yeah.
and there was some other healing going on as well. So yeah, it was just
They've got a bit of like a Necron vibe, haven't they? I think you've got to really alpha them,
yeah.
or it's difficult to shift them.
They've got a Necron vibe. They've got a kind of vampire counts from old fantasy,
Yeah.
Warhammer fantasy kind of vibe.
hmm
Plus the sort of like, I don't know, like aesthetically, they've been described as the elves of
hmm
the game, because they've got this sort of weird otherness and sort of
Yeah.
superiority thing going on.
I feel like they're probably closer to the Drugi than the High Elves of
Yep.
Uldo, aren't they? Because they've got this sort of um not disdain, but thematically they have an almost tyrannid style vibe where they essentially consume or like collect biomatter of any form,
Yeah.
and then it goes into the flesh carving pits, and then it gets rebuilt into clones or drones.
Yep.
So clones being the more socially hierarchical up theirs, whereas drones are, as you would expect from an insect colony, are there to carry out a single purpose, and once they've done that, they probably die. Now the force grown drones that you're talking about, um I was talking to Thomas Carrot, who's the gent that came to play a game with us with me last on Friday, sorry. They are so finite in their time in the world that they're only really meant to last for 48 hours
They're
or
like
so.
mayflies hatching out of a river or something. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So they don't have mouths because they have no need to eat. And they don't have an immune system because they're not going to be alive long enough to die of sepsis. So they are wrapped in bandages that are soaked in antiseptic to try and stop them from picking up disease whilst they're marching to the battlefield.
Amazing.
Um, so they have that body horror vibe, don't they? And they're sort of, there's a really cool story somewhere on the Parabellum website of one of these force grown drones um ha- keeping a fragment of his memory from when he was 100 Kingdoms man at arms. So he's been reconstituted into this, semi mindless drone with just this candle in the dark of him remembering his death at the hands of the spires in the 100 Kingdoms, and reliving it over and over again, and then getting cut down as a drone. But then the Ferromancer just building them back together, and him standing back up on the battlefield to then be cleaved down again, and just this repetitive cycle of torment for the 48 hours that he's going to be alive,
Yeah. Don't
which
have
is
nightmares, kids. But
no,
honestly,
yeah,
it's an amazing
the law's
setting.
amazing,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Very, very cool. So yeah, just a great game against Alex.
Who won?
It was a win for the Spires.
You've got a pretty good win-loss ratio in this
I
game, right?
don't like but yeah, thanks for bringing that up. Yeah,
Yeah.
so Daryl's speaking as the only person that's ever beaten me at Conquest. I haven't played many games though. That's the key, like don't play people, and
Yeah,
you,
yeah.
you can't lose.
Just hold on to that win rate, yeah.
Defo. But yeah, honestly, such a good game against
Mhm.
Alex. Just super enjoyable. And yeah, just I don't play Conquest that often. It's been like, I don't know, like 5 or 6 games over like probably the same number of months or something,
Yeah.
maybe a little longer.
Mhm.
But like honestly, every time I'm playing it, it's like coming home or something.
Mhm.
It's just
Yeah.
absolutely a fantastic game. So
And
yeah, that was
there's
great.
a lot less rules referencing as well, isn't there? I feel like it's a system that's fairly easy to just pick up and run with.
Yeah.
I feel like there's a lot less. God, what does that do again? And does this interact with that? And when does that happen? And once you've got a sort of grip of the rules, and it's keyword related as well, which I know GW have picked up, and that's good. It's a good thing because keywords help a lot.
Keywords
Because
too.
when keyword means one thing for everyone, that's good.
It is agreed. Yeah, there's a lot of options when you're building lists. You
Hmm.
can like take an HQ and they can just be the dude that's like hanging out with the unit,
Yeah,
not doing anything as special. Or you can
you've
sort of
got
like,
so you've got a particularly sort of versatile one in the High Clone Executor, right?
yeah, you can like build them in a number of ways. You can like make them super tanky and like handing out loads of pain, or just have them sort of like hanging out with a bunch of archers,
Hmm.
like
And just throwing bees at people.
basically, yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, yeah, fantastic game. So that was super recently. A little bit further back, I've been playing, as we've mentioned, some Kill Team, and particularly the sort of a Gallow Dark missions.
Yeah. You introduced me to the game actually, and I've thoroughly enjoyed it.
Yeah, we'll see what they do with the new season of Kill Team, which is imminent, I
Hmm.
think. But like as far as it goes, I'm super happy just to have like the Gallow Dark terrain, which is like a bunch of walls. You're
Yeah.
fighting on a Space Hulk, and I never had Space Hulk, so this is this will do the job
Yeah.
kind of thing. But
Yeah.
with like lots of different, you can bring lots of different factions. So I guess I'm
Yeah.
almost thinking of it as like a box game. It's
Hmm.
like it's a
It
good
does.
rule set.
Yeah, it totally feels like that. It does. It does feel like that. And I think it brings this tense, every activation matters claustrophobia that is missing from a lot of games at the minute because your war games tend to be played on these sort of open things where people are shooting from the other end of maps and things like that. And when it's down to like who can peek through a doorway,
Yeah,
and who's going to open the doorway first and potentially, have to take a hit, it does become, every action matters, and it's really cool.
yeah, yeah. It does. It's really good. You can sort of you can get into like the vibe of what's going
Mm.
on the table
Mhm.
pretty easily. And yeah, other than that, I have been playing a couple of games of Warhammer 40k of the new edition, but
Mhm.
we'll get that into a little bit in the main topic.
Mhm.
How about yourself, Daryl? What have you been playing, and why was
Yeah.
it cool?
So lots of 2K Tony practice for Conquest. Obviously, like I say, we've got the LGT coming up. So myself, Alex, and Rob have been trying to play as many 2K games as possible. I had a fun game against a new gent that's joined the club recently to play Conquest called Thomas. Not to be mixed up with Tom, who we also have there, who's another Conquest player. And he's picked up Dweg, so I actually loaned him my Dweg army to play on
Nice.
Friday night, and I played with Rune as well, which is why Alex didn't have any Apex Predators because I was using both of them. So that was fun. And I inadvertently discovered a really good way of dealing with probably one of the most scary units in the game, which was good. Um, on top of that, I have recently played a TTRPG called Lancer, which I've very, very much enjoyed. It's this hybrid war game RPG that plays a lot like classic BattleTech. And I think the game is similar enough to a war game that it would appeal to war gamers. But it's set in this sort of far future world where people are piloting these humanoid slash anthropomorphic style mechs with cool guns and jetpacks and stuff like that. So that was really fun. And tons of Shatterpoint as well. I've been playing quite a lot of Shatterpoint, so did a bit of demoing at the club of it, and then myself and Scott, who's my best mate, and the sort of the tech half of Northern Realms Gaming, um, eh, we we've been playing quite a lot of that together, so that's been really good as well.
So Shatterpoint is the new thing
So
from
it's
Star Wars, set in the Star
new
Wars universe.
Atomic Mass Games, Star Wars.
It's a
Uh,
slightly bigger scale and miniature, so it's not 28.
yeah, no. So it's it's like big 32 with normal proportions.
Okay.
The only thing that I don't like about it is the lightsabers are horrendously thin.
Uh-oh.
Like I can't believe how thin they actually are. Um,
Are you just holding your breath when you're
yeah,
sniffing these off the sprue, or like?
Yeah, totally. Like I've got some of the boxes behind the build, and most of them have got lightsabers in, and there's if I don't snap at least one or two, I would be very surprised. But so yeah, it's a skirmish game. it runs very similarly to Marvel Crisis Protocol, if anyone's played that. So it's, there's no tape measures, there's just range rulers, like, range 2, 3, 4, 5, and 1 is the width of each ruler. And then there's 2 movement templates, and that's it. Everyone uses the same template.
Okay.
So that's good, and it's very it's on 3x3, and it's all about territory control and having the most efficient turn as possible. But it's cool because it's a randomized activation. So you have a deck of cards, you shuffle them together, and then as you draw them, that's who activates in that turn. But the scoring system, which is the where the name shatter point comes from, well, it's the name of a book, but so there's a tug of war. So at the end of your turn, you score points equal to the amount of objectives that you hold, and then you move a tug of war counter towards you, or and then your enemy
Okay.
moves it towards them. And then there's a few situations which cause either you or your opponent to gain a like a momentum token, which makes your side of the scale shorter. So as the game goes on, it takes less for each of you to win because of knocking people out, or if the token ever lands bangs on the center, both of you get one. Or if you can't get it out of your opponent's off, you gain. It's like a bit of a comeback mechanic. So that's really interesting.
So is it just making the last sort of few turns effectively more decisive, right?
So
Like,
there's no last turns. You just keep on activating
oh,
until
okay.
someone wins the struggle. Then it's a best of 3. So there's 3 struggles, and whoever wins 2 of the 3 struggles wins the game.
Sounds cool.
Very good.
Sounds cool. And yeah, I'm interested to ask. You've mentioned a couple of times about going to the LGT
Mhm.
to play some Conquest there.
Yeah.
So how many people are in the tournament? And
So I think they're aiming at, I think there's about 24, 25 at the moment. I think they're aiming for about 32. It's sort of humble beginnings. Last year, I think there was about 16 people, which was the first year there, I think. It's
so to
hard.
compare this, what else have we got at the LGT? Obviously, there's
So 40K will get something like 800 people, or
well, yeah.
something like that. But so Northern Realms Gaming, which is my YouTube and sort of, brand, came about from Song of Ice and Fire. So myself and Scott used to stream Song of Ice and Fire a lot, and then we sort of joined forces with a gent called Carlo, who made a website called Song of Ice and Fire Stats, and it's very active in the community building scene and making Song of Ice and Fire competitive. So we ran the LGT for Song of Ice and Fire 2 years ago.
Cool.
I had 50 players for the first one, and then we ran it again last year and had 130 players. I streamed the whole weekend. Like you can build communities, but it just takes a lot of work to do it. It was like weekly streams, and in every Discord talking about things, going to tournaments and having tickets as prizes and things like that. But it was an amazing experience actually, because we had we could maybe do an episode on this, but we had players turning up from all over Europe, which was really, really cool. It was just an amazing experience to be part of. But yeah, so in essence, it's tough to gain momentum for tournament scenes. And Conquest is still a young game.
How many years now?
I couldn't tell you the exact number, but I think I've had the game for about 2 years now,
Yeah.
and it's probably been around for 4 years or so. But started off quite small, and it's just starting to hit its stride now. I think factions are fleshed out. People are starting to pick up. The casting of the models is unbelievable now, and it's really sort of. I think it ticks a lot of boxes, and the best part about the game actually is the company that run it, because Parabellum are so receptive to their community. They're really active with rules, sort of monitoring and making sure that things seem fair, and
They've got their own Discord that
they've got
all the game
yeah. So
writers are
Leandros,
in.
Leandros, the rules writer, will frequently answer questions about the game, in person. So yeah, absolutely phenomenal. Um,
And is your list and is your attitude going to be win at all costs, or
no,
how's
so I'm
that
not.
gonna go?
Yeah, so I'm not. I've never ever been win at all cost players, and in fact, I've had bad experiences with win at all cost players,
Okay.
and quite often I would rather just not be in the situation. So I've had a couple of
Yeah.
people where I've started to have a bit of a Barney with because they'll take us to task over the silliest of things, and at that point I just go, look, this isn't my type of game. We'll just leave it there. Thank you very much. You've won. You did a great job. Like
Yeah.
that's enough for me because it's just going to it's the reason I stopped playing Malifaux actually. The
Okay.
competitive scene. So there was a couple of players that I kept on getting put against, towards the top tables, and it was just a really unpleasant experience. Really foolish things to argue about, and I just didn't like it. So,
Yeah.
um,
Sort of feels like my experience of like tournaments is limited to a couple of friendly local
mhm,
40k ones. But like, yeah, if you can feel like you've had a good game where like it was like it can be like quite a hard game or
mhm,
whatever,
mhm.
but like it's been just been in that really good spirit of like even people like occasionally sort of like checking if you intended to do something or
Yeah.
not, then yeah, it just makes it just that much better of an experience, right?
So I really like. There's a YouTube channel called Tabletop Titans.
Yep.
You seen them
Yeah,
before?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and they do have that sort of in inverted commas stereotypical American, like pleasantness. They're very polite and stuff. But one thing, even when they're playing, they're sort of there's a series called Nice Guys Play Mean Lists or something, or Good Friends Play Mean Lists or something like that. And it's like a competitive game where they're trying. It's their Tony practice for going to these big opens. Um, but they play something called Keep in Mind, like a Keep in Mind nature, where they'll say, you know, oh, I think I'm gonna like deep strike in here, and they'll be like, keep in mind, I've got
Yeah,
Overwatch from this thing, or
absolutely.
keep in mind this stratagem, which is going to be, really impactful in this sort of situation, or keep in mind if you go there, I'm going to be able to shoot from here, and I think that's really, really good.
I mean
And
that sort of needs you to know the other person's rules as well to some extent, but that that
yeah,
that is the sign of
no,
like a really quality player, isn't it? When yeah,
totally, totally. But even for me, so for instance, in the last tournament, which we played in together, I was playing Gene Sealer Cults, and I played against one of our pals, Paul, um, and his deployment, it still worked out pretty well for me, but his deployment, he was quite far forwards, and I went, just remember that Gene Sealer Cults can advance and charge first turn. The Gene Stealers, the Patriarch can, and I've got 2 units of bikes that can get a pre-game move and do similar, so I can really be up in your grill like turn one. And like I could have easily just let him put all his good stuff right at the front and just hamstrung him for the rest of the game, but I wouldn't. It wouldn't have felt good.
and it's
Yeah.
not yeah, well, it's obviously not a great experience for him to yeah. I mean,
No,
I
and
don't
he's a good player. Paul's a
yeah,
good player, but I
yeah,
think it was just he hadn't really played against Gene Circles that much. So and that's the same sort of attitude that I'm going to have going into the LGT, where I'll probably have a bit of a chat with the person that I'm playing with, find out how long they've been playing, how many games they've had, all that kind of stuff. If they
yeah.
if they're competitively minded, if they're there to play a competitive game, I will absolutely, sort of give them a run for the money. But if it's somebody that's just, and I've done it before, like I actually quite often learn games by going to tournaments. That's how I learned how to play Conquest. I joined an online tournament. Um, and I learned a lot in 5 games.
It fast forwards you like crazy,
Hugely,
yeah,
yeah, yeah. So I, I'm not going to annihilate somebody the first tournament that they've been to, and it's the first time they're playing this game.
mm,
Um, but equally, I will be going to try and win. I'm not. Nobody goes to a game to lose. So I think I'm probably somewhere in the between medium and try hard. In sense of I would like to do well, but also we'll see how it goes.
sounds great. Well, yeah, absolutely. All the best of luck
Thank you.
for that, and yeah, it's a young game as well, right? So it's there's a chance that, well, there are going to be people there who are, probably taking their first dip
Of
into it.
course,
So
yeah. I
yeah,
mean,
that's
so
a social contract to sort of find that out in advance, isn't it?
yeah, and Rob, who's come down, it's going to be his first ever tournament. He's never played in competitive setting before, and he's probably had like maybe 6, 7 games of Conquest. So it's not as if he's
Yeah.
honed and ready. That being said, and Scott said this the other day. Scott played Rob on Friday night, and the game was so close. It was like 67-60 or 65-60. It was really close. Um, and even Scott went, I can't believe how much he's learned in such a short amount of time. Like, he's took a lot of the stuff that I've told him on board and actually went with it instead of, just so a lot. I think a lot of people default, oh well, this is broken, or this is too strong, or this is because they don't understand it with any game system. You know what I mean? So that was really good to see. So and Alex is a good player. I know you beat him last night, but in his defense,
Oh, he's playing with Woodroon.
Woodrood,
That's
yeah,
new to him. He's going to have a
new
different faction
army,
for the tournament.
and they're without a doubt the hardest faction to play in the game. They're a finesse tempo army, which requires a lot of planning and awareness of your units, the opponent's units, and how long things are going to be alive for and everything. So it's a lot. It's a lot on to do, and I think that was his second or third game with them.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, fantastic. So yeah, all the best for the LGT.
Thank you.
So we've talked a lot about Conquest, and with
Mhm.
good reason because it's great. But let's roll into our main topic
Yeah.
and talk about a different game. So Warhammer 40k, yeah, 10th edition's been out for 2 months. Let's have a chat about what we think overall. So yeah, we've got a few things to talk about. So the way that the release worked, the sort of drip feed of
Mhm.
rules, the sort
Mhm.
of slow motion way that the game actually sort of like came out. The Leviathan box, what do we think of that? Impressions from the first few games, balance, and some of the sort of non-standard modes. Whether or not we're going to see any crusade or boarding actions getting played.
Yeah.
And where we think the edition might be headed. So lots to talk about.
Yep. It certainly is.
How should we go first? So yeah, the game had this massive lead in
It did.
of month.
So it's when did we think it started? Something like
I feel
February,
like it was
March,
around
something like that.
March. Yeah,
Yeah.
but we first saw miniatures out
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they had this sort of random just snippets of rules being released in it, and it sparked, you know, m- much gnashing of teeth and frothing at the mouth because people were saying it's sixth edition again, and this is back, and oh my god, this is going to be broken before they had seen everything.
Yeah.
Um, there was lots of gnashing and wailing, and then lots of this is going to be because it came with the promise of what was it? Simplified, not simple. That was what they said, right?
That's what they said.
Yeah, and they did need it because I'm sure we can both agree that ninth edition was in a pretty bad place by the time we got the end of it. It was very convoluted. There was a lot of nested rules, a lot of rules that were similar but not the same with different names that were very easy to get mixed up.
Yeah.
Lots of disgustingly resilience and all of that kind of stuff, and lots of -1s to wound and feel no pains and feel no pains of a 6+ or a 5+ or whatever. Just so much stuff that was really hard to keep track of. There's a lot of admin.
Yeah.
And they quite rightly identified that. I think that was the feedback from a lot of places, and they thought, let's do something about it. So they've, as we mentioned before, went down the keyword route, and they've cut a phase out, no psychic phase
No
anymore.
psychic phase.
Yeah, which I think I don't think it's bad actually. I think it's pretty neat the way they've done it. It doesn't feel too out of place. It feels like the things that are happening, like the movement spells happen in the movement phase and the damage spells happen in the shooting phase or the combat phase. It feels like it's happening at the right sort of time.
I guess
Um,
yeah, not playing like a hugely psychic focused army at all, but it sort of feels like you've got some more flexibility. So if you're doing all your psychic firing in the
mhm,
shooting phase,
mhm.
that could be before you start shooting with
Yeah,
your
exactly.
guns, or it could be afterwards, depending on what sort of target priority you've got.
Yeah,
So it
yeah.
seems
So it helps you sort of focus
options,
your
right?
mortal wounds where they need to be, so you're not having to sort of blow your load of mortal wounds before you know which things are going to be hit by guns or not, right? So,
Exactly. So should we probably mention like who we play? So I like the vanilla stuff out of the starter boxes because
mhm,
I'm a cheapskate. So I play Space Marines of the Ultramarine flavor
mhm.
and Necrons. Who are you looking to play in
Well,
10th edition?
so 10th edition's a little bit of a sore subject for me, Lee. I'm unfortunately a little bit disappointed by it, mainly because of the two factions that I had chose to play going into 10th edition. Those being Adeptus Sororitas and the Leagues of Votan,
Yeah.
who are both going to be new factions for me. I bought new stuff coming into this, so I never, I didn't ride the high of Votan in ninth with all the really strong, crazy stuff or anything like that. I wanted to fresh. They're still, new on sprue in the box at the moment. Um,
And so when you were seeing the rules for Votan when they were drip fed out, were you aghast at that point?
hugely disappointed. So the
Yeah.
National and Wailing of Teeth was,
Some of it
yeah,
was
the National
yours.
of Teeth and Wailing was definitely mine. Yeah, and I just think I feel like they just got dropped to almost unplayable levels. When I saw the index, I just thought this faction can't compete, and actually the meta wash confirms that,
Seems to
doesn't
be
it?
the case.
Something like a 24% win rate, which is just horrendous.
Mm.
And Sisters the same. They just feel like they haven't got the tools to deal with a lot of things, and they have a subpar version of another faction special rule. Eldar have got fate dice where they get to, use good, all these dice on different things, and Sisters have just got a slow version of that, and none of the strong stuff that Eldar have got. So it just feels like they're really behind in that sense.
Mm.
So I've decided to hold off until the bounce patch we'll mention later. But yeah,
Yeah.
so yeah, seen in the run up to 10th launch, I saw Sisters come out. I was a bit, "Ugh." And then I saw Votan, and I just thought, oh, God, this is going to be terrible. So I, dutifully as you do, picked up a couple of boxes of Leviathan, thinking I'll just start a Space Marines army. They're always usable in some
What chapter are you
way,
going?
shape, or form. So I'm actually going to do Carcharodons. Excuse me. I'm actually going to do Carcharodons, who are not a real faction essentially, but they're all just from the lore. So they're the Space Sharks. Got a lovely
What colours are that?
light grey and dark grey.
Nice.
So it's like a really dark grey black shoulder pads with light grey. They're from the Badab Wars. They
Okay.
use a lot of the old, studded armor,
All right.
which would be cool.
Are you going to be chopping up Leviathan guys to put studded armor on them, or
Nah,
a
not
few
like that.
firstborn going to be going in there? Or?
No, I'm not. I'm not gonna. I'll probably just use what's in the box to just roll some dice with friends.
Sure.
But one of the things that I did see somebody do, and it looked amazing, is they used a lot of sort of spares from the Idoneth Deepkin sprues.
Right.
I don't know if you ever saw it. He did a Polynesian themed Carcharodon army, and it was absolutely amazing. So you had the helm crests off the Idoneth Deepkin onto the Space Marine helmet, so it looked like shark fins, and then hand painted, which I'm not going to do. I'll get transfers Polynesian tribal tattoos onto the shoulder pads and all across the face and everything like that.
Oh God, sounds
Got
absolutely amazing.
it is. I'll show you after we're finished. It's
Yeah.
just, and I'll make sure I include some pictures in this because this artist is phenomenal. I don't know his name, but I'll include it in the links as well. But like he had chopped up all the stuff from the frost torn kits and everything, like the big um jaw bones and stuff onto the dreadnought, so they looked all like it was like big shark's jaws around the dreadnought heads and stuff. It was just unbelievable. But yeah, they've got a really cool backstory, and I remember just reading this little snippet um of a bit of a rook between normal Marines and Chaos Marines on a planet in the middle of a big warp storm. And out of the warp storm comes a Space Marine battle cruiser, and then all these pretty rudgy looking Space Marines start dropping down to the planet. They come doing all the Chaos Space Marines, and then the normal Marines are sitting there like, oh God, these look a bit chaosy. They've got spikes all over them, and they've got all this old armor, this old heresy style armor, and there's jaws attached to them and everything like that. And then they just kind of give them a salute and off they go. And everyone's a bit like, oh, bloody
Who
hell,
are
who
they?
who are they, and
Who are
what's just
these
happened?
guys?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And they've got a really cool special character called Tiberos the Red Wake, or Tiberos the Red Wake, who's a relic Terminator, and he's got dual chain fists. Just looks amazing.
I feel
Yeah.
so bad for painting my vanilla Ultramarines in comparison to
Yeah,
this.
no.
But yeah, I don't know, whatever.
Ultramarines
Look,
are cool. So
Romans in space. Romans
so
in
I love,
space are fun.
yeah, and I love early Imperial Romans. So they do get that. They get the both from Reap.
Yeah, very cool. So yeah, I think sort of my experience is probably initially a bit similar. So I also play Necrons, and like when I saw reanimation protocols, I thought it sounded terrible in comparison to what it had been
Yeah.
in ninth edition. But as it turns out, it's basically pretty great. It's just that you didn't know at that point, but like what the Canoptech Reanimator did, and you
Yeah.
didn't know that like warriors reanimate better and all these sort of things. So yeah, I guess the point that I'm sort of thinking about is that yes, the way they've released it
Mhm.
got people up a height, either in good ways or less good
Yeah.
about what their faction was going to do.
Yeah.
Some of that turned out to be borne out, as
Mhm.
in your poor old Votan.
Mhm.
Some of it not so much in terms of like the Necrons. But I guess it just has people talking about the game months in
Does.
advance of it
Yeah.
even coming,
And
and they're
and
they're,
it,
they're good at it. And
the hype train was real, wasn't it? It was really sort of, there was so much. I mean, it even got me excited about playing 40k,
yeah,
and that is no mean feat.
yeah,
I was genuinely, and I wanted it, and I played, like I say, I've been into Warhammer since I was 6 or 7, and I really wanted it to be good because I want to play 40k again. The last time I was really into it was sort of middle of 8, where you know a lot of people had their codexes, and everyone was sort of really taking chunks out of each other, but it was okay. The only people that were really struggling with, I think, was Tyranids at the time. But like it just, yeah, like, so what you tell me what your experience of 40k is,
so
the new 40k.
I've played a couple of friendly 1,000 point games of 10th edition, using the Marines both times. They're using the Gladius Task Force, is
Yep.
it, as a detachment, and I've had two great games. Um, kind of from the point of, I guess, from a sort of fluffy point of view of just
Mm.
really enjoying a couple of the new things. So I really enjoy the fact that like leaders join units now,
Yep, love it.
and that you can sort of like think about how that works kind of thematically, and but obviously like looking for the things that sort of like work best within the rules as well. And sometimes those things cross over, and that's great. So if you've got like, you can have like a Judiciar going along with some Blade Guard. He's giving them fight first, so you can just sort of like have them jumping out of a drop pod.
Mhm.
This is what happened in one of the games. And you can say, go on and charge me because I'm going to fight first now because of the way that the activations work in the fight phase now. And that feels really great. What else? Yeah, so I've had two games. Once against my mate Ben's Chaos Space Marines.
Mm.
So he
Who are doing
had,
quite well in the meta tables
yeah,
at the moment.
they do seem to be doing good. It was his first game in the edition, and it was his first game fielding Abaddon.
Mhm.
Abaddon. Um, so yeah, it was a friendly game, but yeah, really enjoyed it. It did feel more streamlined.
Mhm.
It felt like there was less to sort of keep track of,
Mhm.
less to have to remember. And yeah, it was just a lot of fun. As well, 1,000 point games are now on a bigger size of board, which is great. It just sort of feels like you're probably not getting Alpha Strike.
Yeah.
You're probably
Alpha-
not jumping on objectives just immediately by going first. So the movement phase actually has a sort of tactical back and
Yeah.
forth about thinking, do I want to push forward or hang back?
Back end of 9th had a lot of that, like, knife fight in a alley feeling, didn't it?
Definitely at 1,000 points.
Yeah. So I think it might have been the first time we ever played 40k together. Right? It was a tournament. It was the first Wildlands tournament, and I brought Custodes.
Yep.
And in my defense, I had just filled in for somebody who didn't turn up on that day, so I was the ringer. And I was playing Custodes with 8th edition rules in 9th because I'm an idiot. But
That was non-optimal. Yeah.
non-optimal. No, but you did manage to systematically dismantle most of my army in one turn with a um Nightbringer.
So yeah, it was the Nightbringer that like dished out loads of mortal wounds. But for Necrons, this was sort of like the glorious bit. I forget which mission pack it was when you basically just had to like zoom all your like
Yeah,
scarab swarms up the pitch.
yeah,
They were on the
yeah.
objectives, and everything had
It wasn't even mortal wounds, was it? Because the Custodians get a feel no pain against mortal wounds. It was
it's mortal wounds, but you can't take feel no pains, and you can't
yeah,
take
you can't reduce it in any way,
exactly
right?
yeah.
Yeah, and you don't get invulnerable saves either.
Yeah, I haven't looked at so yeah. There's no Nightbringer phase now in 10th
No.
edition, but I had a quick scan of the rules. He still seems like he's
So,
probably going to be
from my
decent.
understanding, and this is actually from the back of a podcaster, one of our club members does called Warhammer. So shout out Dan, sorry, and Jack, I believe his co-host is
Yep.
called, from Warhammer, it's WOR Hammer. Nice play on words there. But they're talking about the Transcendent Catan being the new bad boy of
Yeah.
the Codex. And
Index.
sorry,
Index.
Index. My apologies. But what's the difference between an index and a codex?
We'll find out.
Yeah,
We'll find out eventually.
but yeah. So there's, I think there's still a lot of playing it. But back to what we're saying, it feels like less of a knife fighting rally. You're not just getting charged by a whole melee army turn one. You're not being sort of crowded out of objectives turn one because somebody's went before you.
Yeah.
It's a much different game now, and I much prefer the bigger board size. I thought the small board size was very unpleasant to play against, especially when I was playing Gene Stealer cults because I just had. I mean, you played against my Gene Stealer cults before the second tourney.
Board control was fine at 1,000 points for Gene Stealer.
Very
Yeah.
fine, too fine, too easy to be fine, isn't it? And you're charging someone's backline turn one. That's too much. So yeah.
So yeah, bigger board, good. And the other game I played was against some Tyranids. So we were doing the battle for Ogram thing.
Yes,
So,
yeah,
we
the
actually,
narrative event that they had.
that's it. We actually like texted in my code, and then it turned out that all the Tyranid fans were just texting in code saying they'd won without even actually playing a game. So
Brilliant.
what was the point anyway? Never mind.
You did what Robert would have done though.
Yeah, exactly. Run off to fight another day. But that was a great game too, and the sort of the Space Marines Seal of Oath, reroll
Oath of
everything.
Moments, Oath of
Oath of
Moments.
Moments. There we go. Oath of Moment, reroll everything was very handy against a Tyranid list.
Yeah, and Girly Man gives you a second one of those, doesn't he? So if you,
I need to get him built at some point.
yeah, man,
Yeah.
and the fact that you can now slot him into any Marines army, any Codex compliant Marines army is pretty crazy. Isn't
At
it?
the moment,
because it's just Marines,
he's
right?
just kicking around with Blood Angels one minute and Dark Angels the next. He's not bothered. It's fine. But yeah, so the two games that I've had have been great. Which kind of brings us on to like the sort of the thing of like possibly it feels like this edition has, if it's been aimed at anyone or if it's been aimed more at anyone, it seems to be possibly more at the casual scene.
Yeah.
Or at least it fits better perhaps with the casual scene of people who are just playing with the models that they have rather than the competitive scene. Whether that's sort of by accident or design, I don't know.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I feel yeah. So it feels like it's aimed at them. You mean it feels like they haven't considered what how the game would play in a competitive environment. I agree. So even though they've released this is how you play the game in a competitive environment. This is the tournament setups that you need for this, that, and the other. They've really made some big mistakes with the rules. As far as people who are going to play the game competitively and make lists with very strong combinations that are very easy to do, and it just feels like it should have been tested more and things like that to me.
So the number one culprit here being
indirect plus
indirect.
dev wounds, yeah, or just strong indirect in general.
So basically being able to hide behind a building, shoot at somebody, kicking out loads of mortal wounds,
or just high damage, And we've got a couple of big culprits from it in Eldor and Thousand Suns and Space Marines. Although Space Marines, across the board look like they're not doing as well. If you look at the meta, what's it called, meta watch,
Meta
the
Watch, yeah.
40K's handout, I think they definitely need to be taken with a pinch of salt because they don't really filter the results very much. So there's just as much of a chance of a Timmy, it's my first time rolling dice in 40K. The results being in there as well, and how many people are going to be playing Space Marines because that's what they've got out of the Leviathan box.
Absolutely.
Um, so there is resources out there that filter to people who are um seeded players or whatever. So and it becomes a bit more apparent then.
Other dashboards with better filters are available.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
you've got some factions like Eldor that have got a 72% win rate that have access to a significant amount of indirect fire, in the form of night spinners, weapons platforms, decans, things like that, where they can essentially just cheat in dice results to gain, you know, handfuls and handfuls of mortal wounds, which most factions can't deal with.
Yeah.
Um, Marines have got Desolation Marines, which are probably too much of a Swiss Army knife. They have good indirect shooting, but then can also step out from cover and kill, heavily armored stuff fairly easily because they can just turn their Nerf guns into crack missile launchers.
Yeah.
Thousand Suns, they can turn their guns indirect and they can turn them into dev wounds. With Magnus with his abilities, and there's some slightly lesser varieties of indirect spamming, in the forms of um the god that can do it quite well, or Astra Militarum, whatever you want to call them. They'll always be god to me.
So, like
Um,
a key concept of war games, very, very generally, is that like if you poke your head above the parapet and shoot at something, there's a decent chance that you'll be
they're gonna
shot
get to
back at.
shoot you back. Yeah,
That's the kind of like the loose contract that a lot of games are working on.
yeah.
So yeah, for this not to have been picked up,
Hmm.
this combination of I'm hiding and I'm going
Yeah.
to kill you a lot with and you won't get a save.
And we had a YouTuber,
It's Mikey from
Mikey from
Hellstorm
Hellstorm
Wargaming. Yeah,
Wargaming. So before the edition actually even dropped, he had posted a video about how he had broke the edition with that same
yeah.
combo,
It's
right?
easy for us to say in hindsight. He
Yeah.
obviously like figured it out in
Yeah,
advance.
yeah,
So,
of course, yeah. But I mean, it shows though, doesn't it? Because the top performing, the top performing factions, or two or three of them are people who can do it. Gene Stealer Cult's up there as well, but for scoring purposes, more than that.
do you see them possibly saying that indirect fire is going to be unlinked from other sort of like, or it would be a sense, if a unit's got indirect fire, that's super strong.
Hmm.
That's its sort of special
Yeah,
thing. You've mentioned before, haven't you? But like, it shouldn't necessarily have access to a bunch
yeah.
of other
So
keywords.
I feel like indirect should cancel out all other keywords because I think linking indirect to things like, I think the only thing that you might be able to argue is blast because
Yeah,
it's a big artillery shell after all, isn't it? But devastating wounds or anti-infantry or anything like that, I think it just makes it too reliable. Um, and if you look at other game systems where there is indirect forms of fire, or super long range, like low risk, high reward style stuff, it's not very reliable. Full action, fantasy, all of those games where they've got ways of firing, they've got noble worth as more as
yeah,
howitzers, all that kind of stuff. It takes a while for them to actually do anything,
yeah.
but
You
when
can
they
cast
do,
this
it's effective.
horrendous spell, but it might go off on yourself, or
Exactly. Or, your
yeah,
cannon could fall short, or it
yeah,
could
yeah,
bounce straight over them, or there's all of these different things that can happen. But when it does go, it goes. Whereas in this edition currently, it just goes every time. We've got a good friend, Chris, who is a very well, sort of well read and
His
sort of
brain figures out 40k very
very
well.
quickly. Yeah,
Yeah,
he's a really sort of, he's got that right brain structure to just be able to see things and assimilate it, and he knows what's strong and what isn't. He does well at tournaments. He, quite often he'll podium at most tournaments. And he himself will happily admit that his competitive list is propped up by 2 units of Desolation Marines, which can both handily wipe out a unit each, if not 2,
Yeah.
every turn.
I mean, you wouldn't, if you're playing Marines, you wouldn't not take them at a tournament.
Exactly.
All right. So much for balance. Bit of a mess, we're saying then.
Big mess. So
Do we think?
top faction has 72% win rate.
Yeah.
Bottom faction has 24% win rate.
Yeah.
That was the last stat that we saw.
Yep.
That's too much. Yeah,
And those outliers become what people take and what people don't take because it's a choice. So, do you think, or any thoughts or predictions for how codexes? Well, before codexes, or around the same time, I think, as possibly the first ones, we've got a balance pass coming in September.
That's right.
So codexes, balance pass. What do you think? How do you think that might play out?
So I think, well, sorry, I don't think, I hope they address the issues that are there that we've just chatted about. I think Votan probably just need a rework from the ground up. Sisters, this is my personal opinions. They need something with higher strength in weapons.
This is tricky because then it's about data sheet and it's about changing the actual stats on data sheets, right?
Yeah,
Which
they've already sold cards.
They've sold a lot of cards, but sisters don't have anything which can sort of punch through.
They've got one weapon which is a melee weapon that can wound a tank on a 4.
Right.
4 or better.
Mm-hmm.
They have hunter killer missiles, which is a non-factor, and their other strongest weapon. This is a weapon which, in canon, is designed for melting tanks. A multi-melter. They have an 18-inch 2-shot chance of wounding on a 5.
Yeah. So not brilliant.
Rubbish.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely rubbish. On what is essentially a very fragile unit as well, because sisters are toughness 3.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they've got power armor, but power armor doesn't really save you that well. And mortal wounds are quite rife as well, so it's even worse.
Yeah. So we've been told that codexes are going to bring not more rules for factions, but different rules. So you're not going to take your Gladius task force anymore for Space Marines. You're going to take one which is not for the White Scars or the Ultramarines or whoever, but is sort of White Scars or Ultramarines flavored.
Yeah,
so we can all tell which one's meant to be which, probably.
Yeah.
So
these are what they call detachments.
These are going to be detachments.
Yeah.
So for the Space Marines, everyone's still going to get their combat doctrines.
Oh yeah.
I'm going to get this the right way around. But the Oath of Moment is.
So I thought Oath of Moment was Marines and combat doctrines was Gladi. Or is that Advance and Charge?
Right. We don't know, do we?
No.
Okay. Well, whichever way round it is, I should know. I need to play more games of 40k in 10th edition. Whichever way round it is, there's going to be different rules for your detachment rather than more rules.
So armies have army rules. So, like for instance, they have the miracle dice for sisters, but they get you get the current detachment rules is +1 to wound if you're less than half strength.
Yeah.
You're
right. It's, by the way, sorry, Oath of Moment's a Space Marine rule, isn't it?
That's
so
the
there
core
we go.
rule,
There we go. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So you're going to keep your Oath of Moment regardless of who you are, but instead of the either fallback and shoot or whatever it is, the different doctrines that you have,
charge,
all of those, you're going to have something else.
Yeah.
Which is going to suit whatever sort of flavor of Marines you're taking.
So
we're gonna, I don't know, like how many different detachments is a codex gonna have? Like say 6 or 8?
Because
or
each
something?
detachment gives you access to a new set of stratagems as well, right?
Some new stratagems.
Yeah.
Not like 6 or 8. Something like that.
Yeah. So you'll lose access to the Gladius Task Force ones.
Yep.
And then gain access to whatever
some
is,
others.
Yeah.
So I guess my point is, there's going to be like as a new codex drops, there's going to be like a flood of different ways of playing
Yeah.
Marines. Hopefully, there's not going to be one which is just by
Out
miles
and
the
out.
best.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, I don't know. Is that in theory? There's now, I don't know how many detachments there are in the game. How many? I don't know. Let's like say 26 or something like that. Once all the codexes are out, or once some codexes come out, there's going to be zillions of these
Yeah.
detachments.
Exactly.
Is the fact that there's going to be so many means that there's so many different kinds of army builds, means that it's not completely, it's going to take people a longer time to figure it out, or is just the internet going to figure it out, find the best one, and that's what everyone takes?
Well, and I think that comes down to competitive, whether people are competitive players or not, doesn't it? So I think a lot of it's going to be, yes, there'll be an ideal tournament list, or two ideal tournament lists that you can choose from. But what I'm hoping is that each of the detachments that comes has some
Something.
play in it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that I know certainly in the past, in codexes in the past, there's always been a one to take, and the rest have been okay. So using sisters because it's one of the factions I know the best. Um, there was the Bloody Rose order, and that was out and out better than the others.
Yeah.
And all of the best tournament lists were Bloody Rose, and it was just because of the environment that they were in, because of the units that were available and the rules of the game. So let's see. I think we've got to give them benefit of the doubt. We've got to hope that they do well with the balance pass. I don't think just increasing points is the answer. I think there's inherently problems with the rules that are there.
Yeah.
And I think it's difficult, though, to just retcon something, isn't it? Because at that point, you're just saying,
We got it wrong, or yeah.
exactly, like, we messed this up and we're having to change it from the ground up, even though it's in your core rulebook and it's in, all of these things that we've published. I think it's going to be difficult to do, um, but I think it needs to be done. In my opinion, it needs to be done for the health of the game. I don't think there's a way to keep combos like that.
You can't just make a unit of Desolation Marines 500 points or something.
No,
It gets a
because
bit daft.
but the problem is though they do 500 points worth of work, and people would probably still manage to make them work.
Mm.
It's not the cost. It's not because they're too cheap, because they're too good.
All right. So much for balance. On a lighter note, possibly to finish up with the 40k chat. New models.
Yeah.
What are you liking that we've seen? I mean, the Tyranids really are the sort of like the thing which is new and cool in the edition so far.
Unbelievable. I just think they've knocked it out of the park. I think even the models that don't necessarily have that great of a place in the game, that are just kind of okay, rules wise, all look phenomenal.
Screamer Killer. For
Screamer
anyone,
Killer,
not necessarily amazing on the table, but like such a cool redo.
amazing, and I think it stayed very you know loyal to the original design, hasn't it? It's still got that big. You must remember it. The big
Yeah.
four
The sort of weird
clawed,
symmetrical thing.
yeah, beautiful. Absolutely one of my favorite models of all time.
Looks good on a square base.
It does, beautiful. And I feel like they've managed to capture it in in a HD 4K. Look at me now, sort of sculpt. Just looks absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah.
Um,
Gene Stealer's the same.
look
Similar?
great.
Like
Yep.
well, I mean, the Screamer Killer has changed quite a bit since the old one.
Yeah.
Gene Stealers haven't changed that much.
No, they haven't.
But
I feel like they've got a bit less cartoony and a bit more
yeah,
believable. Termagants and new Termagants or Homagants look amazing.
they all look really.
Yeah.
Those have got something that's happened as well with like the Eldar Guardians in your sculpts. They're just a bit more slender.
Yeah.
And that
Yeah.
just makes a massive difference.
Exactly, and
Yeah.
that's exactly what's happened to the Gene Stealers as well, isn't it? I love that new model that's coming out, which is the Lictor.
I was going to say
Not the
non
non
emissary.
emissary. That looks fantastic.
Yeah.
But it's the new Lictor sort of hybrid that's got the big flesh cloak,
Right. Yeah.
the trench coat. Love it. absolutely love that thing. It looks absolutely amazing. It looks like something out of Jeepers Creepers.
Yeah,
Fantastic. Yes, I think they've just done a marvelous job with that. Absolutely killed it with the new Terminators as well.
yeah, yeah.
New
Very good.
Terminators are unbelievable.
Yeah. Have you got are you doing a Tyranid army then at some point?
Well,
Is
I've
it
got 2 boxes of Leviathan, so
gonna happen?
yeah.
And what have you got a paint scheme in mind for these?
No, no, not yet. I'm gonna do something probably quite bright for them though.
Oh,
I,
nice.
I fancy trying something. I do paint a lot of dark color schemes,
Mm-hmm.
so actually painting my Wardrune dinosaurs made me kind of a bit like, oh, I
There's
really
some
enjoy this
colours in the
actually.
world. Yeah.
There is, yeah, yeah, and I did quite a lot of poppy highlights on them, and I really enjoyed it. So
They look great for that.
yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So much for 40k. So yeah, I don't know. Sum up. How are you feeling overall? I mean, I've really enjoyed the 2 games I've been playing.
Mhm.
Balance is a mess. Sort of feels like it doesn't wildly affect me because I'm not probably going to many tournaments.
Yeah,
But you kind of want people to feel that they've got a chance of winning games,
yeah.
or that they're not just auto winning
Mhm.
games as well. So yeah, a real mixed bag. I think yeah, it's just I
What's
don't know,
the
it
what's
feels.
the feel like you've got in the club?
I think
You know,
I think people are enjoying it.
yeah.
I think generally, I think the core rules of the game
Mhm.
are really good. I
Mhm.
think the core rules of the game are solid. It has been streamlined in ways which makes it flow a bit better.
It was important as well. Yeah.
That's fine. That's all fine. It's just that there's a couple of sort of egregious interactions between a couple of rules,
Yeah.
which if they just unhinged from each other,
Mhm.
you'd have like a solid set of rules, and then all you're doing is changing data sheet
Mhm.
and points, and
Yeah.
the balance
Yeah.
should, in theory, be possible that
Yeah.
way. I mean, balance always comes in inverted commas. There's so much stuff in the game; it's
Yeah.
ridiculous.
Yeah.
But better balance than 70 on one side and 30 at the bottom. So yeah,
Exactly. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
yeah. How about you?
Um, I feel let down by it
Oh,
currently, but um, still remaining sort of hopelessly hopeful.
romantically optimistic about it.
Exactly. Yeah. I just
All right.
they've got to get it right, man. Because I'm desperate to want to play the game. I've got 4 armies sat in five armies sat in boxes that I just want to get out and get on the table. And it's great playing 40k as a game because you've always got people to play against, tons of events to go to, lots of releases and things like that keep you excited, and lots of cool models to paint, and the law's amazing and everything like that. But I really struggle. It's just the way that my mind works. But I really struggle to play a game where I can't come to a game that I know that I'm going to get challenged at without feeling like I'm just going to get paddled.
Yeah.
Like I want to be able to play a game where we're both throwing haymakers. I don't want it to be like I'm putting this army down, and before I've rolled the dice, I already know I've lost, and that is quite a lot of 40k.
Or one.
Mhm.
All right. Okay. So make 40k great again.
Please,
Yeah, that's what we're after.
yep,
Um. Okay. So yeah, that'll just about do it for episode 1
yeah,
of Betrayed by Dice. Thanks, Daryl. It's been a pleasure
yeah. Thank you, Lee.
rambling away. If you want to contact us, please do. We are at betrayedbydice@gmail.com. We'll put links to various things that we've talked about in some of the show notes and
Yep,
things. And if you're watching us, you should be able to see some of that as well.
yep.
But yeah, it's been absolutely great. We've got like a zillion ideas for more of these. So yeah, looking forward to doing a bunch more. But yeah, just thanks so much for listening, and we'll get you in the next one.
Thanks, guys.